Microsoft has once again raised the prices of the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, which was $17 14 months ago, and now it is $30. At this rate, it is going to be $45 pretty soon here, which is outrageous to think about. They're pushing against the wall, and tons of people in droves are canceling. In fact, the page to cancel has been crashing. Microsoft has kind of put themselves in this corner. They spent over, I think, 80 something billion dollars on tons of studios, which I think is a monopoly. And then they fired half of the people there to emulate a rising stock in growth so that the stocks and investments of the company would go up. And then they would hire H-1B visas, which is outrageous. And they have abandoned the Xbox model. They have abandoned Halo and their flagship titles, all in the name of the Xbox Game Pass. If this thing falls apart, Microsoft is seriously going to have to do something different, because $30 a month doesn't economically make sense unless you're like a hardcore gamer. But when it comes to subscriptions, I always look at the year, right? So let's think about this in terms of a year. The Xbox Game Pass, is it really worth $360 plus tax a year on top of a $10 a month subscription to Xbox Live? Or maybe that's included, I guess, but still, $360. Are you going to be spending that much on games normally without the Game Pass? Now, I'm not going to sit here and say there's no value here, because obviously you get to test games that you normally want to play. You get to try things out very quickly and easily, and that is convenient. And I think some people can still find value in this. It's just the problem is that they're kind of marketing this as some kind of huge win, or kind of giving into what consumers wanted. After raising the prices, they added Ubisoft Classics as access and EA Play with Fortnite Crew. Like, no one gives a crap about those two things, let's be honest. Maybe some people obviously do, but really the only reason people subscribe to the Ultimate is for the day one pass. But even then, most of these so-called AAA games, which honestly bugs me to my core, they're not AAA anymore. Funny enough, these big industry studios are so incompetent that they can't even release games. They can't even do what they were hired to do. They have the biggest budgets, the biggest teams, and they can't do anything right, it feels like, most of the time. So even though this pass has 75 plus games releasing a year, you got to consider at least half of them are going to be half-baked and buggy and release unpolished, right? So, that's my rant on that section. At some point, like, honestly, as an Xbox fan, as someone that grew up on Xbox, I don't even own a Series X. Why? I gotta pay $10 a month just to access online features. I have a perfectly fine gaming computer. Gaming computers are pretty accessible and affordable depending on how high of graphics you want to play. And even if you wanted to play on an ultra high console, you're gonna be paying almost as much as for a gaming PC anyway, but you don't have to pay for silly things like the Xbox Live or PSN, which we all know, I think, at this point in 2025 is a gimmick. Most games are peer-to-peer, and even if they're not, they don't need Sony. It actually falls on the developer in their servers and not Sony or Microsoft to collect $10 from you to access online features. The Xbox Live and PSN cost is there for a few things like account management, matchmaking, social features, party chat, things like that, authentication, security, and tracking gameplay, leaderboard statistics, stuff like that. But still, I think this is something that they could cushion and tank themselves. I don't think it requires each player to put $10 in a month, $120 a year. Seems a bit outrageous. Of course, we know it's not only Microsoft raising prices. Netflix and Disney, for example, have been hiking prices aggressively too, to the point where I don't see how I need to watch $10 or $20 actually. Now it's $22 or something for Netflix for what I was watching, and I was like, dude, I don't, $22, that's like $300 a year of movies and shows that I am not watching, mind you. And same thing with Disney, they also want $360 a year. Really, if you have Netflix and Disney and the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, you're spending north of like $1,000 something, right? I mean, that's just an incredible amount of money on what? I don't think I spent $1,000 a media if I was to just go out and buy stuff or rent stuff. I love YouTube. I watch YouTube all day anyway. I think the people defending these raising costs, saying that it's the tariffs or it's the president's fault or it's inflation, seem to be missing a crucial part about businesses, and it's adopting and adapting to the current marketplace. And people are, quite frankly, broke. The economy, if it was flourishing and doing wonderful and everyone was rich and had a white picket fence and a house, would not be complaining about this right now. Believe it or not, I really don't think $30 would be much if everyone was making bank. But even if that was the case, it would still be a ripoff because economically it doesn't make sense. It's not worth it. And people are taking out loans right now to buy burritos and dinner. So who is this for exactly? So games are also going up to $80. This is something that they all are wanting to do pretty desperately. I think Xbox backpedaled on Outer Worlds 2. It went back to $70 at launch. Perhaps they will back off on this Game Pass thing. Some people think not. I think the outrage is pretty universal. Everything's going up. Gas, groceries, networks like Netflix and Disney, and now Game Pass. The console prices are going up when normally they should be going down and creating a larger ecosystem of players. At the end of the day, it really just depends on if enough people decide to unsubscribe and vote with their wallets. Because quite frankly, if Microsoft can't run the Game Pass and sell Xboxes with what they're doing with what Phil Spencer has done, then they are running a bad business model and they've made some big mistakes. Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, used to be a really great leader, someone that I really liked back in the day, but it just seems like there's been bad decisions coming out consistently for years now. Like there used to be healthy competition between Xbox and Sony, and Phil Spencer did things like pushed backwards compatibility, crossplay, and is a big fan of Halo and has done things for Halo, but now it feels like, where are these decisions going exactly? Xbox has been a sham. They gave up on their flagship IPs, it feels like, and they gave up on the Xbox itself, right? Why even buy an Xbox? There's no more exclusive games. And another small thing about that is that the reason why games take such a long time to develop, from my understanding, is partly because of the graphics, because of the PC, multiple console releases, and the optimization, trying to make all of these different things work together at launch. Which before, for example, we'd have a game like Halo 3 that released on one console. They would know exactly how to optimize it. They know how to update it perfectly. There's no worry about crossplay or all of these different kinds of licenses for all these different kinds of games all over the place, trying to get all these different teams to work together. Exclusive games had some benefit in that, right? I think that, we just had one game release on one console and it just worked right. Sony is completely taking over Microsoft. I worry that Sony is going to get fat and lazy too, but as far as I can tell, they're doing a pretty good job. And their Xbox has got to do something different.